Thank you for participating in the MCAP American Government Stimuli Review activity. We are excited that you will be able to join us. The purpose of this video is to provide general overviews of social studies education in Maryland, the assessment process, and information about how to review stimuli. By having this common foundation, it will enable us to jump right into our virtual test development discussions. This training video is divided into 3 sections. First, it will provide a general overview of the state of social studies education in Maryland. Next, it will briefly explain the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program, narrowly focusing on the government assessment. Finally, we will discuss reviewing stimuli prior to the meeting. Please feel free to work through this video at your own pace. Each section is designed to be a natural starting or stopping point. Let's begin with some information about Maryland social studies education. Please take a moment to read the MSDE Social Studies Vision Statement. As you can see, one of the prime goals of the MSDE Social Studies Office is to make sure that the students can engage in skills that are necessary in being able to participate in our democracy by being empowered, informed, and socially responsible participants. The mission of the MSDE Social Studies Office helps to bring the vision into fruition. And by having teachers participate in our assessment development process, it helps us to have our assessment aligned with classroom practices and instruction. To help guide the path of instruction, there are 6 social studies standards. The standards are the overarching ideas you will find embedded within our frameworks for students to access the content. You will notice that each of the standards begins with "Students will inquire." Then the language engages the specific goals of the standard. The skills and processes standard serves as a vessel to help students interact through inquiry with each of the other standards. Take a moment and read the language found in the skills and processes standard, sometimes referred to as the 6.0 standard. While you are reading, make note of the skills that are being addressed. Critically evaluate content, a variety of source material. Develop, defend, and critique arguments. Take informed action. These ideas we can see in many places in social studies, from the standards and framework to instruction, to even our evidence-based argument set item type found on both of these social studies assessments in Maryland. The ideas in the Maryland Skills and Processes Standard are not new. They can also be found in the C3 framework from the National Council for the Social Studies. The C3 framework is divided into 4 dimensions to help drive inquiry and learning. As our social studies community has moved towards inquiry-based instructional practices, MSDE has tried to also move the frameworks and the assessment to those practices as well. The Maryland Social Studies Standards and Framework help to inform local curricula. As you can see, we've been busy in Maryland updating and aligning the frameworks to the Maryland state standards. Government was one of the first frameworks to be updated. It was implemented in the 2018 school year, along with modern world history and middle school US history. Since then, in 2020, the elementary frameworks, PK through 5th grade, and the high school U.S. history framework have been implemented. By the time the grade 6 and 7 frameworks are released, there will be a percolation of social studies foundations and skills through all grade levels. Now that we've discussed Maryland social studies, let's discuss the assessment. The Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program, or MCAP, is now the umbrella term for the entire assessment program in the state of Maryland. The Division of Assessment and the Office of Social Studies work closely on the MCAP American Government, formerly known as the Government HSA. While the name has changed, the process is the same. MSDE works with our vendor, Cognia, and Maryland teachers to help deliver our assessment. The boxes in green show all of the steps that involve Maryland teachers in this process. We're really proud that teachers play a role in the government assessment program. In many states, this is not the case. As you can see, we're currently at the beginning of the process. The stimuli that you are going to be reviewing will eventually have items written to them by Maryland item writers. After the items are written, they will then go through another teacher committee to have the questions evaluated. After the items are approved by the committee, they will be placed on a form as a field test item. From field testing, we can make sure the item is performing well by reviewing the stats and through the range finding process for the constructed response items. During range finding, we also have Maryland teachers participating. If an item performs well and it does not have any other flags, then it is rested and eventually it will be placed on an operational form. The e-bus goes through the same process, but it's not as linear as the rest of development. There's a lot of back and forth to get a good, compelling question and sources that provide enough evidence to create selected response items. If you were with us last year during Stimuli review, 2 of the e-bus that you will be reviewing this year may seem similar. To an extent, they are, but last year, several of the sources were rejected during Stimuli review. Therefore, it restarted those e-bus. The questions were reworked by our item writers, as were some of the sources. So you will see that this is a process, and we do value all of your comments and your feedback. As a reminder, this is the current layout of our assessment. The testing sessions were shortened to help promote the goal of MCAP in reducing testing times, and due to state legislation stating the assessment should be designed to be given within a class period. The assessment layout is designed to be given sequentially, but it is up to the local school system to determine the method of administration. So in some locals, it might be all administered over the course of one day during a long testing period. But in other systems, it may be spread out into 2 or more testing periods, which may run 2 or more days. You can see that the test still has the traditional selected response and brief constructed response items, as well as the newer item types with technology enhanced items, TEIs, and of course, our e-bus, evidence-based argument set. In session 1 and 3, there are just SRs, BCRs, and TEIs. However, you will notice in session 2 and 4, this is where the student's going to encounter the e-bus item, with a few standalone selected response and technology enhanced items at the beginning of those sessions. Let's take a few minutes to review the types of items we just discussed. All of the examples that are in this video are from the practice test. If you would like to review the items in more depth or interact with the items on the platform, please visit the practice test. Selected response items. This item, often referred to as a multiple choice question. It has a question, a correct answer choice, and 3 distractors. This is another example of a selected response item, but this example has a stimulus attached for students to use when answering the question. The stimuli you will be reviewing will eventually be used on an item such as this. Brief constructed response items, or BCRs, can be used with or without a stimulus. Here, students will be asked 3 bullets of information, normally following the following format. Bullet 1, directly asking for information or an explanation. Bullet 2, followed by a higher level cognitive question. And ultimately, bullet 3, reminding students to include details and examples to support your answer. These items are scored with a 4-point content rubric. Here is the 4-point rubric used for our BCRs. Ultimately, in order to get a score of a 4, the response demonstrates comprehensive understanding of the content, question, and/or problem. The response is insightful and completely integrates knowledge to thoroughly answer the question. It addresses all aspects of the question. So both bullets are answered with details. Demonstrates comprehensive government knowledge. Minimal misconceptions do not interfere with understanding. When appropriate, applies evidence correctly from the stimulus to support response. This 3rd bullet is making sure that the students are using a stimulus if available. When you are reviewing stimuli, one of the parameters we will focus on is, does it provide enough information for a student to engage? We do not want stimuli that are just decorative. That stated, some stimuli are better suited for BCRs than SRs, so you will see a variety. Technology-enhanced items, or TEIs, allow students to engage with assessment content and demonstrate their understanding in ways that an SR does not allow. Currently, the Social Studies Assessment Program uses 3 main types of TEIs. Drag and drops. These work well to complete tables, graphic organizers, charts. Hotspots, or hot text. So this could be a graphic, such as a map, a graph, a chart, where students have to select one or more areas on some type of graphic. Or hot text, so the students can be given text or a graphic, and they have to select one or more choices. Click to select, work well to select items in a list, choices or headlines. On the paper form of the assessment, TEIs are not possible. So on the paper-based test, you will notice a replacement item or a paper variant. Here you will see the replacement item from the click to select item that we previously shown. So you can get a sense of how those TEIs are developed for how they're accommodated for the paper form. Here is an example of an eBus as it is displayed on the testing platform. The platform is shown in a split screen. So on the left side, students can navigate the sources. We have our introduction, our background, and this has 4 sources. So source A, B, C, and D. On the intro, you will find the compelling question and the background information. You can also see this arrow on the left screen. This helps to expand the sources into full screen mode. On the right side, students can navigate to each of the selected response questions and to answering the compelling question in their ECR at the end of the set. Here's the 5-point rubric used for our ECR in the eBus item. So ultimately, in order to get a 5, a student must, or the response must, demonstrate substantial understanding of the content, question, or problem. The response is insightful and completely integrates knowledge to thoroughly answer the question. It develops a comprehensive claim addressing the compelling question, supports claim with full synthesis, citing evidence from all appropriate sources, and connection to claim is substantial. Minor misconceptions do not interfere with understanding. So in the eBus item, the stimuli are essential to a student being able to answer any of the questions, whether it be an SR or the constructed response. When we discuss reviewing these items, we'll highlight some of the parameters of this review. Now that you've become more familiar with the Maryland Social Studies program and the MCAP assessment, we will begin to discuss how the stimuli review process will work. So at the end of the stimuli review, these are the outcomes that we hope to achieve. This year, we are trying a new one-day format. Due to this new format, we've asked you to conduct your independent review of the stimuli asynchronously. By doing this initial review of the stimuli ahead of time, we will have more time for group discussion during our synchronous virtual event. In this portion of the video, we will be discussing how to review in iTempora and how to take notes that you will be able to access during the June 12th discussions. As a reminder of the item development process, during this review, you will be viewing the stimuli that will eventually be given to an item writer. The item writer will use the stimulus and the assigned assessment limit to then create a test item. As you can see on this slide, there are many types of stimuli you can engage with during this review. You will also get to review the stimuli and the compelling question for our eBus item. These are some think abouts when you are reviewing each of the stimuli. These are parameters to keep in mind for what makes a good stimulus. It engages the student's interest, is accessible to all students, links to an assessment limit, is substantial enough to support a question, and is appropriate for use on a high-stakes, large-scale assessment. So your task is going to be to review each stimulus prior to the June 12th meeting. You are going to record your recommendation for that stimulus, accept with edits, and reject, and use the comments feature to make any notes about the stimulus that you wish to remember for our synchronous group meeting. So with the standalone stimulus, major considerations to keep in mind. Now, these are going to be used to build a single SR, CR, or even a TEI item. So along with the parameters of a good stimulus, keeping those in mind, ultimately for each of the standalones, we need to make sure that there's alignment to the assessment limit. Does it connect with what is being assessed, with what is being measured? And is that stimulus appropriate for the grade level and the American government course? So when you're thinking about that, just keep your students in mind. When you are reviewing the EBA sets, These are the general things that we want you to consider in your evaluation. And you'll be evaluating the question, the background information, as well as the sources. So first, the connection to American government. The EBUS is content agnostic. So we're really focusing on assessing the skills and processes when we are looking at the EBUS, not the student's knowledge of a specific assessment limit. However, there still must be a clear connection to government in the topic of the EBUS. Second, we're looking at the question's approachability or the clarity of the question. So most of our compelling questions are binary. This allows all students to be able to engage with that question. However, we do want you to think about, is the question too broad or too narrow while you are reviewing it? Third, the sources themselves. So this is layered because we want you to evaluate the stimulus itself, but also the connection of the stimulus to that compelling question. So do the sources match the question? Is there enough evidence provided within the source to then go and use in that constructed response at the end? So iTempora, to aid in this process, we'll be using iTempora to review the stimuli and make notes that we can use during the meetings. At the tech check, a demonstration of the iTempora system will occur. So please feel free to ask any questions during the tech check or even during one of our office hours. This is what your screen will look like when you are reviewing the standalone stimuli. So iTempora has a split screen. On the left side of the split screen, you're going to see the stimulus. And on the right side, you'll see the metadata, the vote, and the comments feature. So here are a few tools that you're going to want to use. First of all, these are your user controls. We have the user dude, the plus sign, and the question mark. For most of your review, you're going to be in the plus sign. When you click on the plus sign, the drop-down menu is going to appear. And this is where you're going to find your binders. Each binder has the stimulus in it, or the stimuli in them. So you'll see that we have our EBUS items. For the purposes of this video, all of the titles are blank. However, when you log into iTempora, you will see the EBUS are each populated with a title. And then you'll also see the standalone stimuli folder at the bottom. The last thing you'll see is the government item specs, and we'll talk about those later. I just want to point out that feature right now. As you are navigating, if we were to navigate to the standalone stimuli, we would see right here, this is a good check to make sure what binder you're in, especially once you get to different EBUS, and when we're back in our group discussions, you might be going back and forth a little more frequently. So we have our stimuli on the left side, and then on the right side, we have three features. We have our metadata tab, our voting tab, and our commentary tab. So now we're going to talk a little bit about each of those. Metadata. So in iTempora, you're going to see the metadata given in the same basic way. We have the standard, expectation, indicator, and assessment limit text. We get to the assessment limit through our content standards. So again, if we remember back, there are six content standards in social studies. However, in American government, we only assess 5 of those 6. The standards are broken into expectations. So you'll see, you'll notice several of those expectation levels throughout government. From the expectation, we have an indicator, and then ultimately the assessment limit. That looks like this in iTempora. So the bulk of the information that is on this flowchart is found right here. So we have the standard, the expectation, the indicator, and then the assessment limit text. Now you'll notice the assessment limit text, it has several assessment limits within it. So here we have political causes and effects of reapportionment, redistricting, gerrymandering, and voting patterns. However, we're only going to be focusing on one of those pieces for each of the stimulus review. So here, in this case, we're focusing on letter C. Now, so you're not having to count, and what we've done is at the top of the screen, you'll see that that assessment limit has been narrowly focused upon. And then at the bottom, we've put the text, the abbreviation. So you can see exactly what assessment limit you are linking it to. But this helps to take you through the entire path so you can see how students should be interacting with that assessment limit. Should they be evaluating impacts? Should they be just looking at it? Here we see cause and effect. So it allows you a little bit more understanding of that assessment limit. So that's our metadata. If you click on the tab next to metadata, you'll see our voting screen. And here in voting, if you click on the drop-down menu, you'll see three choices: accept, accept with edits, or reject. So after you have viewed the stimulus, looked at the assessment limit and see if it matches the assessment limit, looked and evaluated the stimulus itself for if it is a good stimulus and if it matches those parameters, then you're going to click on your vote. And then make sure once you have entered your vote, you press post judgment to make sure that that vote is registering in the system. For each of these recommendations, accept is accept the stimulus, no edits. It looks good. Accept with edits. So these could be anywhere from the assessment limit doesn't really match, or there's better assessment limits. So I could go into my item specs document and maybe something is coded to checks and balances, but I think it would make a much better presidential powers question, or it just fits that assessment limit better. So that could be accept with edits. It could be a vocabulary issue that I think this word or this idea needs to be defined for my students. Or maybe it's with a graph, maybe there's too many points. So it might be, I like this graph, but please give me only every 4 years of data. So those are some examples of different edits you could be suggesting. Reject, or more commonly referred to as DNU, or do not use, is that there's nothing we can do to make that stimulus work. So potential reasons could be inappropriate for the grade level, does not align to the assessment limit, has a bias or sensitivity concern. And we do have a whole nother group looking at these items just from a bias and sensitivity lens. But if as you're reviewing, that becomes a concern, please make sure you do write it down. And a content error. The last tab on that right side is the commentary tab. And here, this is an area where you can write some comments. And these are basically notes to yourself and notes to MSDE. So if you have accepted something with edits or rejected something, make sure that you definitely put that feedback in the comment box. If you have accepted, you might not need to write anything down. So there might be over a week of time between when you initially look at these items and when you're having your group discussions. So make sure you are writing down comments, because they're going to help you during that group discussion to remind you of any concerns or likes that you had about the item. And your comments could definitely include suggested edits or a rationale for why you rejected the item. And again, please make sure you're clicking on the post comment button once you have your comments written down. That way they register into the system. So recording your response for the eBus items. So once you've done the standalone review, well, then you're going to want to go through each of the folders. So you're going to have to click on each eBus. And once you clicked on the eBus, then you can review that particular eBus. It will give you the introduction and all of the sources that are associated with the eBus. Remember to see what eBus folder you're in at any time in the upper right hand corner. That's going to be just a good quick check for which eBus you're reviewing. You're going to see that each eBus starts you on the introduction screen, and the introduction is going to give you the setup to the eBus, the compelling question, and then background information. And remember, these are content agnostic. So we are trying to assess the skills and processes here. So we do want you to make sure that one, the compelling question fits an American government topic, but there's no specific assessment limit that it needs to fit. And also the background information. Have we given students enough information that all students can be on level playing field when they enter that eBus item? What you're going to notice on your right side of your screen is that one of our tabs is now missing, the metadata tag, because all of these items are tagged to 6.0 or our skills and processes standard. So here, there's only two things for you to do: vote, and the voting button is going to be the same, except accept with edits or reject. Making sure you press post judgment, and then your commentary button, which is where you write your comments and feedback. So here in the eBus item, you might find yourself typing more reminders for your group discussions when we meet in person. And again, just make sure you're pressing post judgment and post comments. And then you can navigate using the navigation bar here on the right-hand side, or just by pressing the next button found on the top. This eBus has 5 sources. Some only have 4. So if you enter into an eBus and it only has 4 sources, that was by design. Then during our meeting on June 12th, we'll break into groups where we will discuss each of the stimulus and come to a consensus decision. That is ultimately our goal when we leave stimuli review. Last few reminders here. We will have 2 office hour sessions that are really only half an hour, but they are found on Tuesday, June 8th and Thursday, June 10th. So we are going to be able to answer any questions that you might have, and they could be about the process that was just described here, or they could be about the iTempera platform. We do have our tech check prior to all of these, but if as you are going along, if you have any iTempera questions, please feel free to ask during these tech checks, or just come in and say hi. If you're running across, if you are running into any roadblocks prior to any of these meetings, please feel free to reach out early and we can assist you. You should have received a draft of the schedule with all of your other test development papers, but I just want to highlight a few key things. The virtual breakfast will begin. It will run from 8 to 8:15. Bring your own breakfast. These are a good place to stop in and say hello, but also to make sure that your technology is working and everything is ready to go, because we will start promptly at 8:15. 8:15 will be an overview. We'll show you some of the paperwork that you need to fill out, and then we'll get into the process as to what you are going to do with all of these items that you have looked at. And then by 9, we're into our small groups. And that's where you're going to start your conversations and your discussions about which stimuli we should accept, which ones we should accept with some edits, and which ones may be rejected. We have a lunch break from 12 to 1, and then we'll be wrapping up by 3. Thank you again. We're excited to be able to meet and learn with you during this process, and we will see you very soon.